Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the November 23rd, 2023 Halifax Water Board of Commissioners meeting on the public portion. First of all, we would like to welcome Councillor Paul Russell, who will be a commissioner on the Halifax Water Board starting December 1st, 2023. So we're very happy to have Paul on board. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
And Paul will be replacing Commissioner Lovelace, who will end her term with us on November 30th, 2023. So we thank Commissioner Lovelace for her service to the Halifax Water Board. Okay, we have our agenda in place. First item up is the ratification of the in-camera motions. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I'll move that.
Commissioner Zaharov,
A second.
can you just read the motion?
Sure. So I'll move that the Halifax Water Board ratify the in-camera motions.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Kent. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. We have the approval, item 2, approval of the order of business and approval of additions or deletions. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I'll move that. Let the Halifax Water Board approve the order of business and approve additions and deletions.
Commissioner Kent. Commissioner Zaharov, a second. Is there any changes to the agenda that have been proposed?
Madam Chair, items 4B and C, I think they're covered under item 9. Do we need to have them twice on the agenda?
I also looked at that, but I think we needed them documented under business arising from the minutes.
Oh, okay.
So,
thank you.
But yes, okay. I had that thought too. So I don't believe there's any changes. Okay, we'll vote on the motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Item 3, approval of the minutes of the public meetings held on Thursday, September 28th, 2023 and Friday, October 20th, 2023. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I will move that Halifax Water Board approve the minutes of the September 28th, 2023 and the October 20th, 2023 public meetings.
One second.
Commissioner Zaharov with the second. Any amendments to the minutes as presented for both meetings? Go ahead, Commissioner Zaharov.
Quick question, and apologies again, my highlight is disappeared here. Business arising from minutes, item number 3 in the minutes, that the decision recorded as not applicable. I don't think we voted on this one, but I think there was a request from the board for the Halifax Water staff to provide the interim capital projects dashboard, and this is why we have the follow-on item. So I'm not sure if we needed to record it as a decision, but I think it was important because we'll be reviewing the interim dashboard today in item 4A.
So I think you're on item 3 of
the minutes from the last meeting, yes.
September 28th. Do you want to amend the discussion notes?
Yeah. So for the Halifax Water staff to present the interim dashboard until the full one being developed by March 2024.
Okay.
I'll second.
Can you take that away, Heidi? Any other comments? Okay, so the motion, can you restate your motion, Commissioner Kent, to include approve the minutes and amendments as stated?
Yes, I'll move that Halifax Water approve the minutes of and amended minutes of September 28th and 2023 in October. Which one is it?
It's September 28th. That's right.
Okay, and approve October 20th, 2023 public meetings.
Second.
You still second, Commissioner Zaharoff? Thank you. Any further discussion? The amended motion is on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. So as noted, we have a few items in business arising. So I believe Reid is going to give us a verbal update on the capital project dashboard.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So as Commissioner Zaharoff mentioned, and as we talked about in the last meeting, the board had requested a capital projects dashboard. And as we've reported, we're currently working on our capital planning and management information system, which is a capital program management platform that'll give us all kinds of dashboard and reporting capabilities. However, there's some months to go till that is complete and we're reporting in it. However, we took the board's comments from the last meeting and we've attempted to provide some information. So what we've done is we've taken what at its origin is a financial spreadsheet that we use for managing projects. We've provided a subset. It's all our active $1 million plus cost projects, which is about 40 to 50 projects. We've tried to add some milestone information and some red light, yellow light, green light things to it. And that report is provided to you as an information report, item 6I. This is our first go at it. We're happy to take commissioners' comments. If there's other information that we can incorporate into it, we certainly will. Just make a couple of very slight comments is in looking through it this morning. We've taken a fairly conservative approach on the status lights. There's some that are shown as at risk or behind, because let's say there was one I'm thinking of as our Fairview Cove Tunnel project that we've been working on land issues. That's showing as red as an example, but that is going to tender, that we will have a closed tender process in January. So, it's showing the red compared to a schedule from a couple of years ago. There's also a block of at-risk projects in there that I'll bring to your attention because these are integrated projects we were doing with HRM. And when the floods came, we did not have this on any of our contracts, but these were contracts led by HRM, where the contractors were diverted to flood mitigation. And so HRM has deferred those projects into next year. That's not all our at-risk ones, but there's a group of about a half a dozen that way. But anyway, that's the report. That's all I prepared to say. We're going to provide that every board meeting. But if there's other questions, and like I said, the main thing is we're certainly interested in comments if there's something we can do with the format or additional information for sure.
Thank you, Reid, and we really appreciate you developing the interim dashboard. Any questions for Reid on that matter? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, quick comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Reid, I had a few ideas about perhaps adding a little bit more information. Would you like me to reach out with ideas separately or bring it up here?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps the best form, do you want to email me or even over coffee? We have a workshop coming up.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zaharoff. Okay, items 4B and C will be discussed in item 9, so we will defer those to later in the meeting. We have item 4D, flood event of July 21st, 2023, costs incurred. Louis.
Would you like the long report or the short report?
We would like your 5-minute report.
So the total amount that we have spent to the 11th of November is approximately $919,000. What we do is we will we provide an order number that staff, as they do work on specific things related to the flood, they would record their time, record the materials to that work order that's tracked, and then that accumulates to the 919,000. What may be missing from that is if managers were spending time on it, we may or may not have recorded our time specifically to that, so there's probably a little bit of additional cost there, but the vast majority of the work out in the fields and by staff is included in the 919,000. That was it.
Thank you, Louis. That's a very helpful update. Any questions for Louis on that matter?
If I may, we have thousands of 8,000 work orders at HRM dealing with streets. I'm just wondering if you can give an estimate of how many work orders might left to be completed.
Specific out in the field in terms of dealing with the individuals, I don't have that information. Kenda may have an idea, or Colin may have an idea out there from an operational perspective.
I'm going to defer to Colin on the actual physical operational ones, but I know we have approximately 800, 900 non-emergency drainage complaints that are still to be investigated and processed. And so those are getting picked away at, but I'll defer to Colin on the current volume of work orders.
Yeah, from the operations point of view, we're still working on a backlog of around about 300 to 400 work orders.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin and Kenda. Very helpful. Okay, moving on. First item is item 5, financial reporting, operating results as of September 30th, 2023, and year-end projections. I believe this is you, Louis.
Yes, I know that this report came out, the financial reports came out late. We have been, as you know, implemented a new ERP system. What we've found is some of the reporting, the way that Halifax Water does it, has been quite problematic to get out of the system, but we're working through it and doing our best to get information out as quickly as we can. I was just going to highlight a couple of key things from the operating side. The main one I tend to focus on is the cash side. We have approximately $24 million in the bank as of the end of September. That increased significantly when our debt issue, the fall debt debenture, or the debenture came in. So that number has increased to by over $50 million with the debt with the debt issue. The other area that I would focus on is the current operating surplus that we have as an organization. So as you know, we budgeted to have a deficit in water and in stormwater. We currently have the deficit in water is there, but we do have a surplus in wastewater and stormwater. So as an organization, we are currently at approximately $1.5 million surplus, which is better than we anticipated. But we continue to monitor how this is going. We expect that there will be additional costs by the end of the year that will affect that. But as of the end of September, we are in a surplus position. And that was the update I was going to provide.
Thank you, Louis, and thank you for that update on the cash. That was my question. Any questions for Louis? And just a point of order, we have moved to a different platform. If any board member would like to speak, if you can just raise your hand. Any questions for Louis on the operating results? Okay, moving on. You're still up, Louis. Item 6, capital expenditures as of September 30th.
So again, we will, just to highlight the total budget of capital that we have available. So that's previous year amounts plus the $146.7 million from the current year gives us a total budget available of $382 million in capital. As of the end of September, we've spent $112 million of that. So we have approximately $270 million in approved capital that we continue to work through. The list of the projects or the summary of the projects that are there and the nature of the projects is included. That was it.
Thank you, Louis. Any questions from the board? Okay, item 7, the proposed 2024 Halifax Regional Water Commission Employees Pension Plan budget. I have a motion to be put forward.
I can make that motion, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kolomeitov.
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the proposed 2024 budget for the Halifax Water Employees Pension Plan, covering the period January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, as attached to report number, item number 7, dated November 17th, 2023.
Commissioner Zaharov has seconded. Are you presenting, Louis?
I'm going to ask Heather Britton to do the presentation on the budget.
Welcome, Heather. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning. I'll provide you with just a brief presentation on the proposed budget for the Halifax Water Pension Plan for 2024. So we'll start with the statement of changes in net assets available for benefits, which details the activity, both the money going into the plan and coming out of the plan throughout the year. So for 2024, we are proposing a revenue budget of 10.5 million, contribution budget of 7.7 million, offset by expenses of 6.8 million for a net change of 11.4 million. And this is compared to 2023, the budget for 2023 of 7.5 million. Next slide. The revenue budget is made up of two key components. Net investment income, I should say. It's investment income offset by investment management fees and changes in the fair value of investment assets. So investment income is fairly consistent historically year over year. So we used the 2023 forecast as the budget for 2024. For the increases in the fair value of investment assets, that's a more difficult one to predict, as you can imagine, but we did use a 5-year average, including a fairly conservative forecast for 2023. So 2.4 million in investment income and 8.1 million in the changes of in the fair value of investment assets for a total of 10.5 million in projected revenue. So next slide, please. The contributions were projecting or proposing a budget of 7.7 million. So that's made up of both employee and employer contributions of $3.8 million each, and additional voluntary contributions of 0.1 million. Some of the key assumptions that we considered when preparing that budget. We're estimating 30 new hires. I know that might seem low. Oftentimes we have maybe 40 or 50 new hires, offset that by some terminations. We tend not to overstate that number, or try not to overstate that number, because that would mean more money going into the plan, and we want to be fairly conservative with that figure. Salary and wage escalation, just this week, the 2.25% was approved by both the union groups and the non-union groups, effective November 1st, I believe, and December 3rd, respectively. And the pensionable earnings cap of 142,000. So that pensionable earnings cap has been in place since 2015. It was in place for 8 years, capped at 2015 levels for 8 years, starting in 2016. So starting in 2024, that is going to increase by 1%. So that 142,000 represents that 1% increase. And contributions are at a rate of 9.6%, which is as recommended by the actuarial valuation in January 1st, 2022. And I suspect that'll remain in place until the next actuarial valuation, which is coming up in just over a year, January 1st, 2025. Just for context, we put a note down there to say at the current salary levels, a 1% increase in salaries company-wide would result in approximately $73,000 in additional contributions into the plan. And the expense budget, we are projecting expenses of 6.8 million. That's made up of 4 main components. So benefit payments to our pensioners and survivors, termination payments, pre-retirement death benefits, and administrative expenses. So of course, the biggest component of the expenses would be our benefit payments to our pensioners. That's why we have a pension plan, is to pay out our pensions. So 5.5 million is budgeted for 2024. Termination payments, we are projecting about $1 million. That's based on, I think, a 5-year average. We don't tend to budget pre-retirement death benefits, of course, and administrative expenses of 0.3 million. Some of the key assumptions there, indexing of pensions. Our pensions are indexed at CPI to a maximum of 2% for pre-2016 benefits earned and 1% for post-2015 benefits earned. So we are, expecting that CPI will be above 2%, so that 2% and 1% limits will apply. We're estimating about 8 new retirements based on a 5-year average. Terminations, we're basing that also on a 5-year average plus 10% just because of the increase in termination payouts over the years. And when people terminate, of course, they can either transfer their pension to a new pension plan, or maybe our RSPs or locked in accounts. Some are taxable cash refunds. No matter what, it's all money coming out of the plan. So they're included in those termination payouts. And as mentioned above, we assume no pre-retirement death benefits. And that's it. That summarizes the proposed budget for 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Heather. Commissioner Zaharov?
Thanks, Heather. Question and maybe comment. So the board package, page 57, it mentions that 1% salary increase is approximately 75,000 throughout the year. You had 73,000 on the presentation. I assume it's a roundup error.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that.
The capacity report provided in the information item. Sorry, I'm just trying to navigate the system here.
Sure.
Information item, the 5I institutional capacity report. It mentions that the assumption is for the next year the hiring will be around 52 net new positions, while for the pension plan you assume 30. Is this as a result of this conservative approach of not releasing too much money into the plan too early?
It is just a conservative approach for the budget. It's just not to overstate that. Yeah, that's all it is. I know in prior years we've used 20, we've gone with 20, and then again it does show that we're over budget in contributions, which is kind of a good thing. More money going into the plan than we originally thought. But certainly something, we do try to take a look at the budget, the staffing budget for the following year to see if we can tie it in a little bit, but we just make some assumptions and try to keep it conservative.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just had one, Heather. You're showing about a 30% increase in the investment manager fees. Any comment on that?
Not really. Those come from, of course, we're part of the HRM Master Trust, and those fees, we're allocated a proportionate amount of those based on their managing of the investments. So I don't really have a lot of information on that. I did notice as well that it went up in 2023, and so we matched that for 2024. But I'm happy to look into that and happy to ask my colleagues there if they can provide more information.
It would be great if you could just include that in your next update to the board.
Sure.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, the motion is on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you, Louis and Heather.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Moving on, capital approvals, item 8.1, the Silver Sands Water Supply Plant Linear Main Extension. We have a motion to put forward.
I'd like to put that forward, Madam Chair.
Go ahead,
Move
Commissioner Kent.
Halifax Water Board approved the linear main extension along Cow Bay Road to the Silver Sands Water Supply Plant at a total of cost of $6,009,000, including net HST.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Commissioner Kolomitsev has seconded. Thank you. Reid, any comments on this one?
Yeah, just briefly, Madam Chair, and I have Tom Gorman with us. Tom Gorman is our Senior Manager of Infrastructure Planning, and he is the lead on these projects. And I would also just like to say that there's a series of 3 projects here. We were originally planning to bring these to you in January or perhaps even March, but we learned on October 30th that the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board is changing a practice such that, well, I should back up and say, ideally, if we can, we like to get a tender price because that's the best price we're ever going to get and come to you for approvals and then the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board. But projects over $5 million, which are the ones that mostly come to this board, their practice now is in most cases to have a hearing process. So that changes a 6-week approval process to a 5 to 6 month approval process. So if we want to build these ones, which we do this year, so Tom and his team have done tremendous work to pull the reports together and get them on the agenda. We appreciate them being added to the agenda. But yeah, so the first one is Silver Sands. Silver Sands is a manufactured home park in the Cow Bay area. The water system was originally developed and operated by the park owner, and Halifax Water was asked to take it over due to a lot of problems with it in 1998. So what we're proposing to do is extend the water main from the end of the system on Cow Bay Road to this community. The report lists a number of reasons why we're doing it. Some are regulatory compliance issues, but in summary, we do not have enough groundwater. The groundwater is of very poor quality. It's iron and manganese, which is difficult to treat. The treatment equipment is difficult to maintain. The building that's there and the treatment equipment both need to be replaced. And we do not have a good waste disposal system for that. And I can tell you on behalf of Colin, and I was formerly responsible for this, we have done everything to mitigate this and try to come up with operational or interim solutions. Last thing I'll say is this is part of our integrated resource plan. However, it was for much later. We're bringing this forward, but ultimately in the long term, this project will form a loop to serve the sort of Morris Lake area and further development out in that area. So anyway, that's my comments. Tom and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom and Reed, for bringing that forward in a timely fashion to meet that. Go ahead, Commissioner Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tom and Reed, for the work that you're doing. I happen to be the district counselor for the area as well. So this has been an ongoing issue for the 20 years that I've been representing in some capacity this particular area. So, and in fact, and I can attest to the work that Reed has said about it's been an ongoing, they've done everything they possibly can to keep this to the degree that it has. And I think the fact that it's survived this long, of course, it was inherited and not an ideal model for the current way that we do work, but this solution is actually going to be very welcome in the community, I believe, and it is a certainly much needed at this point. And I agree with I'm glad to hear Reed speak to the potential that it has for the future development as well, that will be coming along, that the province has fast-tracked, even though it's a second or third development for Clayton development. There are other members of the community as well, and other developers who are also poised to do some development out in that area. So this will pay for itself quite quickly, I believe.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Commissioner Kolomeitsev.
Thank you. My question was just about the cost compared to the number of current customers. And I think some of my question when I first read this has been answered partly by what Commissioner Kent just mentioned. But in terms of the time that this facility will be in service down the road, and also the potential for expansion, my concern when I first saw this was, of course, and I think a lot of people have the same thought, is the cost per person is very high, over $100,000 per person. But we're talking about a facility that would be around for how many years, and what are the chances that this will be able to support further customers over the next X number of years?
Yeah, I can tell you that the sizing of the water main is consistent with our plan for servicing the broader area. And it's going to form part of the network and ultimately connect up to is it the Morris Lake area, Tom, that it would eventually connect up to? Yeah. So yes, the main is sized to serve that area. So it's a bit of an investment in the future. And when you said the lifespan of the facility, are you talking the current one? Commissioner,
nope.
The current?
I'm talking about when you're spending this money, how
Okay.
long will this money be sort of acting at, how long until you have to replace it again? So I guess what I'm looking at is, if I were to see that only 42 customers are on there, it's going to cost this much money. It helps to understand how many years will this new facility be in service and working.
Well, we typically depreciate water mains over 75 years, so that's the expected life. And if it's well engineered and good soil conditions and all that, it could be, we've got pipes that we're still using that are 100 years plus.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have anything to add? No? Okay. Councillor Russell?
Thank you very much. I have two questions, I think. The first one is related to the Utility and Review Board approval process. What happens if you proceed with this project and the Utility and Review Board in a few months tips it over, or they reject it for some reason? How much risk is there of that happening, et cetera? I'm not where the approval process for them seems to be a lot longer. Is this contingent on that being approved? The second thing relates back to what the previous commissioner asked. We are anticipating doubling the population of HRM in the province within the next 40 years, and then adding another third to it afterwards, so going from 1 million to 2 million to 3 million. And you were talking about the capacity of the water main, and I'm wondering if you have allocated that, or are you looking at something closer to a current usage?
It's not so much the current usage, but it's the current development potential of the lands that the main is meant to serve. So there's a broader area. This is just a small portion that eventually loops back up to the Caldwell Road area, and that would be part of the servicing strategy for that broader area. And we'll be talking about this more with you, Commissioner, but we do have a 30-year integrated resource plan. That's our 30-year plan. It's based on HRM's regional plan. We're just about to start updating the integrated resource plan, and we are very much aware and in communication with HRM planning staff about the population drivers, and we're just sorting that out to get into our next planning phase for our next IRP. That's about to start almost any day now.
Okay, and the UARB?
The UARB, yes. Well, if the UARB doesn't approve it, then we're not allowed to spend the money. You asked about the risk of that not happening, so the project wouldn't proceed. My 26 years here, I can not remember the URB out and out rejecting a project. Usually they might put some conditions on it. They might say to us, the next time you ask for something, bring us different information or do it in a different way. So the risk of them actually not approving it totally is fairly low. There might be some small expenditures that they would choose not to, but ultimately, yes, they have to approve it before we're able to spend the money, if that answers your question.
It does. To a point, would you be proceeding with design or anything else that they might have an impact on later on?
Yeah, so the design has been done. We are allowed to spend up to $1 million before we go to the URB to approve it. So the design has already been done. It was approved when we approved our capital budget last January. And so the design is already complete. So this is just to complete the project with construction.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
I just had a follow-up of a similar question ahead of Commissioner Zaharov. Any comment on when you go to RFP, since you're now going to RFP ahead of URB approval, which you may frequently do? Any comment on the risk in the contractual piece?
I think in the long term, we have to figure out how to navigate that. That is a very big change for us. And the difficulty is you simply can't go get a tender price and hold it open. But we have a fairly tight, it's 5% approval limit. So if a tender comes in more than that, we have to go back. What we're hoping this case is we are going to go to tender before Christmas. We will close tenders in January. The matter will most likely still be open at the URB. So whether the price is high or low, then budget it. Once we get the tender results, we will write to the URB and ask to amend our funding request and of course go to our board as well if necessary. And hopefully that request will be well received. Typically those are.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Zahara?
Thanks. Reid, maybe question not on the project itself, rather on something that you mentioned before. Did I hear you right? You said that the approval with URB extended from 5-6 weeks to 5-6 months now?
Yeah, what they're doing is normally we would do what we call a routine approval, where we submit our application, they ask us some questions, we respond, the process takes about 6 weeks. We noticed late last year, 2 projects that they ordered hearings. And typically we would only have a hearing, on a project once every 2-3 years on a very unique project. But what they have told us is, and Nova Scotia Power has been dealing with this for quite some time, is their plan, not all projects over 5 million, but I'm going to say most projects over 5 million will have a hearing process, not necessarily an in-person hearing. There's one they call a paper hearing where it's exchange of documents, but they might hire interveners or gather evidence. And yes, so it will be a 5 to 6 month approval process.
Thanks. It's definitely very concerning. The delay it will introduce, given all the discussions about very aggressive development plans for the province. So
yes, absolutely.
I can imagine how difficult it will be to keep up with the pace if it takes like 6 months to get an approval to execute the program. Okay, that's not really for Halifax Water, but thanks for the clarification.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We'll call the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioner Kent. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Item 8.2, capital approval for sewer separation program, South Park, Cathedral Lane, Phase 2. There's a motion to be put on the floor.
We can do it, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Zahara.
I'll move that the Halifax Water Board approve funding in the amount of $4,078,000 for the South Park, Cathedral Lane, Phase 2 sewer separation project. Previous funding in the amount of $93,000 was approved for design for total project cost of $4,171,000 inclusive of net HST.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Kent with the second. Reid, do you have any comments for the board?
Just a couple to reinforce. This is phase 2 of one of the combined sewer separation pockets that we're doing on the Halifax Peninsula. And we're doing this combined sewer separation to create capacity for development in the sanitary sewer system. And in fact, this is what we call the Spring Garden Road pocket. It's the Spring Garden Road, Roby Street, College, and anyway, that block, there's a lot of development going on in there. We did the first phase in 2022, and so this is the next phase. And just to reinforce that the funding is 50% from a regional development charge, 25% from Halifax Water Sources, and 25% from HRM through a funding agreement we have called LOSQA, where HRM contributes to areas where we're upgrading the sewer system to accommodate growth. So similar, we're looking to go to tender before Christmas and get this work started in the spring.
Thank you, Reid. Go ahead, Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. Effectively the same question on capacity that I had last time and that I will try and avoid with the next item. Are you anticipating double the population?
Yeah, so I've had this discussion with Commissioner Duncan yesterday. And so yes, this is based on the current regional plan. We know development is anticipating there. Before we go out to tender, we'll certainly have conversations with HRM because they know best what development is going to go into that pocket. If there is increased, if there's a need to increase the capacity of the pipe we're installing, we'll look at doing that. And that would actually increase the cost to HRM. It wouldn't directly increase the cost to Halifax Water.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll call the vote for the motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Okay, one more read. Item 8.3, Sullivan's Pond Storm Sewer Replacement Phase 2. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I'll move that, Madam Chair, that Halifax Board approve funding in the amount of $6,220,000 for Sullivan's Pond Phase 2, Part 1 project for a total Halifax Water cost of $7,420,000 inclusive of net HST.
I
I'll
think
second.
you mean
Can you
million?
read that for million?
Oh, sorry. Yes, $7,420,000 inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent, seconded by Commissioner Kalamitsev.
Sure.
Go ahead, read any background.
Just, everybody's familiar with, we've done phase 1 of Sullivan's Pond in 2018. This is phase 2. It's a very challenging part. It goes through the Papa intersection to the harbor. Just to say this, we're doing very much in partnership with HRM. There's a lot of alignment to get it done. What we're going to do this year is HRM is extending Dundas Street and installing a bridge, and we will do our work as part of that. Once that bridge is in place, that will allow us to close the Papa intersection to get the storm sewer rehabilitation through that, and that work will be done next year. So this is for this year's project. The costs that we're asking you to approve are Halifax Water costs. We will be managing the project together. Halifax Water will be tendering it. We will do a cost-sharing agreement with HRM, but they will pay for the bridge, parkland features, that type of thing. So the tender price will be higher than what you're approving, but what you're approving is just the Halifax Water assets.
You read any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Zaharoff.
Me again, Reid. Two quick questions on the phasing. So it's split into 2 phases due to the construction season. Is that the season that is driven by the environmental requirements, or this is the standard construction season?
Yeah, in part, the timing is critical as it relates to the working in water courses, but the main thing driving the 2 phases is, if everybody's familiar, it's the Prince Albert Road, Alderney, Portland Street interchange. It's 5 corners. It's very busy. That intersection needs to be totally ripped up. So this year, or 2024, HRM will extend Dundas Street and put in the bridge and extend Canal Street. That will allow us to close the Papa intersection. So this year's work is to set up the work next year and to provide traffic diversion.
Okay, thanks. And one more, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I think it's probably following one of the workshops that we had on the environmental health and safety subcommittees. The report attached here state that the same environmental considerations were taken into account as for the phase 1. I was wondering if you have any ballpark estimates of how much of the extra cost to those environmental considerations actually added versus the standard design if you would use that.
Yeah, Tom, do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I do not have that information at my fingertips. I wasn't involved in phase 1, so I can't really give you an exact what it was before and what it's going to be this time. Probably the most important thing is we're following all the rules and we're trying to be as compliant as required. I don't think the rules have changed from phase 1 to phase 2, but I'd have to do a little bit of research to find out what was done in the original, just to do a comparison.
Yeah, Commissioner, we can get you that information, but essentially we're providing fish passage for DFO and daylighting some of the sewers, which is part of the fish passage as well. But we can investigate that cost. That's what we're required to do, but we can investigate that cost and let you know.
No, I clearly understand the regulatory requirements. I think if I recall correctly, I think on the environmental health and safety subcommittee, we discussed that some of those environmental considerations sometimes double, if not triple, the cost of the overall project. So I just wanted to, to note that it's, there is a very significant cost attached to adhering to those regulatory requirements for Halifax Water, and
Yes.
as a result, to residents, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Okay. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. I see in the chat that Commissioner Kent now has a hard stop at 11:45. So I would like to take care of items 10, 11, and 12 first, because otherwise we will lose quorum. So if there's no opposition, I would like to move to item 10 first. Okay, so item 10, enterprise risk management policy. We have a motion to be put on the floor.
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the revised ERM policy as attached to report item number 10 dated November 17th, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Kolomitsev. Do I have a seconder? Commissioner Zaharov will second. I think we have a presentation.
And Eddie Demola was just on. I see him in the picture. I was just texting him saying, yeah, you don't need to be on the call yet because there's still one more presentation, and then you moved him up. So
sorry, my apologies.
I thought I was going to have to do a mad run to find him, but he's here and ready.
Yes.
Excellent pivot. Go ahead.
Very much.
I probably messed with Jake too. Sorry, Jake.
Is there a PowerPoint to accompany this,
Yes,
or is it just the board package?
it's the PowerPoint that I shared with you.
Apologies, folks. There we are.
Thank you, everyone, for that quick pivot.
There we go. And apologies for the delay.
Yes. Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished board members, other stakeholders present. Here with me is the presentation on the recent changes we made on the enterprise risk management policy. Just to put a bit of background to this, the enterprise risk management program was implemented to provide a holistic way through which Halifax Water manages its peculiar risks. And this document here provides the guidelines and pretty much a sense of culture and ownership as to how we implement the framework. The presentation here is just to provide high-level insights on the changes that were made, pretty much not material, as it were, because the journey through the implementation of the ERM program is first from a broad perspective, and then as we mature in our risk management, we continue to drill down and focus into the core areas that impact significantly on our business objectives. Next slide, Jake. So the document, like I mentioned earlier, was developed at commencement of the ERM program, pretty much providing insights and guidelines on how we operationalize the enterprise risk management framework. The review was initiated pretty much to further emphasize and narrow all of these various tools and methodologies to be more Halifax Water specific. So the changes here are not necessarily changing the direction of the ERM program, but rather drilling further down into extensive detail to make sure we are becoming more usable and we can adopt the ERM framework in taking more strategic decisions as well. And as at the November 8, 2023 Halifax Water Enterprise Risk Management Committee, the changes to the policy were endorsed. Next slide. Thank you. So here are just key highlights of what has happened in that regard. Two broad categories. First, sections are sections that are currently existing on the policy document where very minor changes were made. Once again, like I mentioned earlier, it is an attempt to make sure that the document is more case-specific, Halifax Water usable. The good thing about enterprise risk management as a concept in business is that it allows us the independence to adopt it in a way that it becomes most usable and applicable to the processes that we use. And by virtue of the peculiarity of Halifax Water as an essential service provider, the risk framework and the risk universe which we operate is a very dynamic one, and we must continue to ensure that our policy addresses the needs that this brings forward. So on the first category are four broad areas that are currently existing on the document: the intent, purpose, the introduction, and the risk appetite statement. On the intent piece, we just ensured that we are more specific, like I mentioned, context and usage. On the purpose side, we also try to make it slightly more broad, to cover the entire ERM end-to-end framework from risk identification up until monitoring and reporting. On the introduction piece, we attempted to accommodate more specifics, minimize broad descriptions, because risk management in itself can be an endless conversation, as it were. Of course, we try to specify and define the tools that we're using and appropriately describe the concepts. We also made some slight changes to the risk appetite statement to ensure that we are indicating the specific risks that are peculiar to the service delivery that we provide, and of course the external factors that impact on the performance on this bit. New additions to the policy are the ERM methodology and an expansion to the governance structure. This piece, just to note again that they already exist on the framework, but it was important to bring them forward into the policy document so it creates an interaction as to how the policy then translates into the framework and guides the implementation of the program. The expansion of the governance structure was pretty much an attempt to ensure that we appropriately clarify roles and responsibilities and the communication of the risk management program from top to bottom and bottom up of the governance structure within Halifax Water. Next slide, please. So here's just a broad level highlight of what the ERM framework is and how the policy then plugs into it. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a document that provides the guidelines to promote culture and ownership. So following approval of this policy document, we can then, of course, inculcate that into governance and communication structure, basically segmenting the areas within the governance structure where certain levels of risk items becomes critical to be monitored and the escalation conditions for such risks. I'll move on to using the typical risk management tools for identification, controls, reporting, provide periodic heat maps just to give high-level insights into areas of concerns and how we are faring with those exposures. Upon that, we're also going to implement the BCMS, which is the Business Continuity Management System, to accommodate these existing programs within it. While you see those summary highlights there, the CMP is the Crisis Management Plan, the IRP is the Incident Response Plan, the ERP is the Emergency Response Plan, the ICS is the Incident Command System, and the DR is the Disaster Recovery Program. Now, just to note again that all of these programs are currently existing and operationalizing in their silos. But the effort of the Business Continuity Management System is to harmonize these, because that really is at the core of what the Enterprise Risk Management Program is about, to ensure that there's a clear oversight in how all of these various programs interact, to make sure that we're not duplicating any form of activities, but rather effectively implementing the programs that are embedded in the ERM framework. Next slide. Yeah, I'm happy to take questions and comments at this time.
Thank you, Ademiola, and thank you for accommodating the schedule change. Just a question. I don't know if you saw it, Heidi, in the chat.
I did, and so
Commissioner Zaharoff, is your question whether or not you can canvass Eddie DeMola on questions about the policy, or I wasn't clear? I apologize.
Yeah, no, I was going to suggest some modifications to the language of the policy.
You certainly can. This would be your opportunity to do so. Yes.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, whenever I have the floor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Zaharoff.
Okay, page 103 of the package, or page 1 of the report, guiding risk appetite definitions and principles. It states that the Halifax Water overall risk appetite statement is Halifax Water seeks to accept and effectively manage the risks. I assume that the intention is to identify and mitigate risks before the acceptance. Perhaps we can or discuss or amend it. I don't think Halifax Water wants to accept the risks before evaluating them.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I'm following where you are. So you said on page 1 of 3 of the report?
If it's a board package, it's 103 out of 220.
Sorry.
And there is a risk appetite statement. It's page 1 out of 5 for the report itself.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, excellent. And so that would be close to the bottom of the page.
Yeah, right. The overall risk appetite statement. Yeah.
Okay. And so if I understand your comment correctly, you're suggesting that this should be modified to reflect that Halifax Water should first analyze and assess risks before they consider accepting them?
Yep. I can suggest one that Halifax Water proactively identifies and effectively manages the risks inherent in providing high quality, but it's I'm just not comfortable with Halifax Water seeks to accept the risk.
I don't know if Eddie DeMola wanted to comment on that.
Yes, just to clarify a bit in that regard, was to just say that the risk appetite statement pretty much is just emphasis on the organization's understanding of the peculiarity of risks that we are dealing with that are peculiar to the service that we provide. So the acceptance doesn't, in quote, connote that we are taking on whatever exposure limit. It's just talking about the appetite that, okay, in the context of the risk exposures that we face in providing water services, these are the peculiar risks that we see. We understand that they are there, but we agree to still provide these services despite those risk exposures. I just thought to provide that clarification.
So
thank you.
It may be that you want to identify and effectively manage instead of accept it right away.
Yeah.
Any comment, Commissioner Kolomitsev?
Yeah, just that I agree with Kostya that accepting the risk would be to say that I have identified it, but that you've accepted it and that you are not going to make an effort to mitigate it, versus taking ownership of the risk and then addressing it.
Thank you very much.
So, Madam Chair, I've put the policy on the screen with a red line, and I simply want to confirm that this is the edit that was being sought.
Commissioner Kolomitsev, does my identify match what you just said?
Yes, I believe so. Can we confirm that accept isn't used in any of the other language that we are approving today? And just take a moment.
And Commissioner Zaharoff, does identify address your comment as well?
I would suggest proactively identify, but identify works as well.
Okay. Commissioner Kent, do you have a comment on this specific wording or another comment?
No, I just want to say in general, I certainly support this change. I think that anytime we have that kind of language around accept can be challenged in any court or situation. So I think that this is a better way to approach it. Good catch, Kostya. and great work, folks. This is good.
While Heidi's checking on Commissioner Kolomeitsev's question about accept, did you have other comments, Kostya?
Yep. The following statement that I think it was on the same page. Yeah, the following principles were used. So we can switch to the principles themselves. Yeah, I was wondering about if the protection of Halifax water assets and resources is actually one of the guiding principles there as well.
Sorry, Commissioner, please take it again. I missed
that. Protection of Halifax water assets and resources.
Oh, yes.
In my mind, the public safety is a derivative of resources, because if Halifax water protects the water, then it in turn protects the public health. I don't know if you want to state it as a separate one, but it's all related to me.
So I'll add the text if there's any objection, or if you'd like to change anything, certainly let me know, but
Any comment on adding public safety? Seemed like it would be good to spell that out. Any comment, Commissioner Kolomeitsev?
I'm just pausing because I don't want us to rush this. It's a very specific wording that we need.
And just checking on the timing, if based on these comments and potentially others, is this timely to approve today, or do we have the opportunity to send it back to the Enterprise Risk Committee?
Yeah.
It can absolutely go back to the ERM committee. And so perhaps what we could do is we could get the balance of the comments. I could maintain this red line version, and it will be the red line version that goes back to ERM.
Be okay, Commissioner Kolomeitsev?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll email a few more suggestions separately.
No,
so we'll
no, go ahead.
Here. Right
yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Okay. So should I proceed, Madam Chair?
Yes, please, Commissioner Zaharov.
Page 105 of the package. It states here at the very bottom. Do you want to flip to that page, or I'll just spell out the
Sorry, I apologize. I don't have the package open. So it's within this?
Yep, bottom of page 3, Heidi.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I'm here. Got you.
Next paragraph. I think you just slide it a little bit. Can you just keep scrolling, please?
Top of page 4, Heidi.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I think here in coordination, the first paragraph, in coordination with the ERM program manager, the ERM steering committee will review policy and all that stuff. I think we should probably add here and escalate to the board as necessary. If it's good, I'll keep going.
Keep going.
Page 107. It's page 5 of the package. The definitions here. The steering committee. Yep, I think the intention here is the ERM steering committee. I just want to make sure that we're using the same terms across the policy. Is that correct? The ERM steering committee?
Sure. I'll add it just in case, but we'll double check that.
Okay. And then on the page 7, there is a flow chart that states senior management committee. I suspect it's the same ERM steering committee, just for the clarity of using the same terms. But if you could please confirm that, and that was just the final one for me.
So the flow chart was in the original version, which was provided for you for context, what's proposed to be removed
Oh,
from what we're going forward with because of exactly the reasons you're raising. There's a challenge with making sure all the wording matched. We tried to be as clear as we could in the policy here itself.
No, okay, then, yeah, that's irrelevant then. That's it for me. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you, Commissioner Zaharov. So we will defer the approval of this and we'll send it back to the ERM committee. Thank you, everyone. Good efforts. Adi Damola, thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay, moving on. Item 11, board compensation policy. We have a motion to be put on the floor. Oh, Mr. Kent. You're on mute.
Thank you. I'll put it on the floor and then I will speak to it. Move that Halifax Water approve the board compensation policy attached to the report, item 11, dated November 17th, 2023.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Commissioner Zaharov put his hand up. Commissioner Kent, you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this really is the right thing to do at this point, in the economy that we are in all of the pressures that we have on so many levels from the municipality, from Halifax Water, is this, I don't know if there's a precedent in the past, Heidi or Tarek, if we have chosen not to make this kind of increase. I just think timing is very, very bad, and from a public perspective, if we can forego that this year, maybe that's what we should do.
So I can speak to that, and great comment. So we've been discussing this for about 6 months now. I think as you saw in the package, we did have all those concerns you just addressed, based on that the current process in place would have identified a CPI increase to the compensation. And I believe all board members were unanimous in the fact that that was not the right approach. And so the CPI approach was implemented in 2016 when CPI numbers were, more in the low single digits, and they are now, at an unprecedented level. And so we did spend 6 months, and Heidi's group, along with some students she had on board, did a comprehensive review of, similar boards and similar compensation. We also wanted to have a mechanism that really, took the matter out of our hands, that it was not the board appointing their own compensation level every year. So we took a very modest approach of a 1.75% as opposed to the 7.3 that would have been there. So the report came back that our compensation level was similar to other boards with the similar responsibilities. And then it's also got mechanisms in there to, if we do need to approach it, but otherwise we've just put in a straight line 1.75% to make sure that it's very modest and it addresses your concern. But if you think the 1.75 is we can still discuss the amount.
I'll just be curious what others our opinions are of it at this moment. I just every day, I mean, and I'm one of the commissioners that's every day is facing the concerns that public are raising. They may or may not be raising them directly to Halifax Water, but every utility is doing the same, and every utility is everything we spend money on right now is a challenge. And it's not just those who are struggling, and almost all users are. So I just wonder if this is a year we can skip this.
And certainly to your point, we deferred all increases, making sure we did have that fulsome discussion, Commissioner Kent. Any other comments from the board before Heidi jumps in? No, go ahead, Heidi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Kent, you raise valid concerns and valid points. I will say that based on the structure that we have right now, the policy that exists for the board currently effectively automatically applies increases to compensation of CPI. And so the board actively has to make a decision in order to rebut that, so to speak. And so on some level, although the board can change it, it's a little less flexible, so to speak. The intention of this policy was to give the board more flexibility and also to take it away from that connection directly to something in particular and to attach it to a number that seemed a little bit more reasonable. And so if this policy is not approved today, the existing policy will continue to stand. And the board compensation will continue to increase by CPI unless proactive decisions are made by the board. If this policy is accepted today, then the rates that are noted in the policy will become the standard. And then each year, an increase of 1.75% will be added unless the board decides otherwise. Okay. And the other part about this policy is it requires the board to review this compensation on a regular basis. Whereas previously the other policy was very passive. It simply allowed the increases to occur without a whole lot of thought or consideration. And so to your point about the optics and the concern that we want to make sure that we're addressing, I do think that this policy does take that into consideration, and it places the board in a better position to be able to address those types of comments if and when they do occur.
Okay, and thank you. That is comforting to me, that piece. I certainly support the alternative as going forward than as a stronger position. I suspect that this will pass, and I'm okay with that at this stage. Having heard that, I do think that it might be helpful to board members if there's some communication on that, is certainly the councilor members in particular, because we tend to get those kinds of emails. So maybe some language around how to respond would be helpful.
We can certainly engage our communication staff to assist with crafting some wording that can be provided to our commissioners.
It may or may not get picked up, but I think that right now more people are watching this kind of thing that when they and the media as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Go ahead, Commissioner Kolomeitsev.
Just going based off of what Commissioner Kent said, I'm wondering what would be the opportunity, since we've already approved the previous one, when would be the next opportunity, if this passes, to say, do we want to reassess what the current year or next year will be? And we can always put forward to the current board to say we can reduce that number, right? When would that be?
It would be on an annual basis. And so if the policy is approved today, then theoretically this would be put into that board business cycle document as an item to be considered in November of each year.
Okay, so it would already be decided for 2024 then?
Yes, unless you decide otherwise.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Commissioner Kent, I think, is opposed. She's on mute.
Sorry, I will vote in favor in this case.
Vote in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you to everyone. That was a very, I think it was a good reason to pause on the existing policy and have that discussion. Item 12, Halifax Water Board Governance Manual. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I can do it, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I'll move the Halifax Water Board approve the amendments to the corporate governance manual attached to the report, item number 12, dated November 17th, 2023.
Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Commissioner Kent has seconded that. Heidi, do you have any discussion?
The materials are in the package. I'll just simply add that this is coming to the board at the request of the board. You might recall that back in June of this year, the board approved the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, and it was a result of the approval of that policy that you requested that consequential amendments, I guess you could say, be made to the board governance manual. So for all intents and purposes, from my perspective, these amendments are significant in that they will align with our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, but relatively innocuous in that they don't necessarily change any powers or authorities or anything within the document.
Thank you, Heidi. I thought they were great updates. Go ahead, Commissioner Zaharov.
Quick question, Heidi, on the edits that were in the package here. So my understanding that they updated basically to accommodate the new DEI policy. I'm looking at its board package, page 142, paragraph 6.2. It states here about the meetings that the chair in consultation with the general manager and or secretary edition. So are we taking the opportunity to update the policy to add the secretary as a consultation point, or is that related to the DEI policy as well?
That was simply to reflect the existing practice.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you for that, Heidi. It was an important update to the governance manual. Okay, we're going to go back to item 9. And just so we know, Commissioner Kent has a hard stop at 11:45 and Commissioner Zaharov has a hard stop at 12. And so we're going to hand it over to Tarek for item 9 on the planning impact and response to extreme weather events. Go ahead, Tarek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we're here today because there were a few questions from previous board meetings about the impact our watershed, our infrastructure, and our communication style during the last storm events in July. So there was different areas. So we've decided to move on with a presentation to speak to those 3 items. With me today, Dr. Wendy, who is our expert in water resources, and also Colin, who will join us as well, and Jeff, who's going to speak to the communication piece. So I will hand it over to Wendy, again, just conscious of the time here today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So again, as Tarek mentioned, we'll be going through an overview of the impacts of the recent weather events to systems and the public service announcements to HRM councillors and outreach to taxpayers as part of this presentation. If we move on to the next slide. And so I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk about our source water monitoring programs, and particularly about some of the impacts that we saw to water quality and treatment due to the extreme weather events of this summer. And so firstly, this slide is to give you an overview of our source water monitoring programs and their history. So since 2009, we've had a source water protection monitoring program in place. This involves sampling at a routine frequency in both of our watersheds and deep lake, all of our deep lake sites for a variety of water quality parameters. And so this program allows us to look at long-term trends in water quality, but also helps us to identify changes that may occur due to events or incidents in our watersheds, due to development, land use changes, watershed management activities, or climate-related activities. And then through our research partnership with Dalhousie University, we identified the concept of lake recovery back in 2015, 2016. And lake recovery, quickly for those that have not heard the term before, is where we see changes to lake water chemistry and biology due to indirect impacts due to climate change mitigation activities. And so we through the move towards cleaner fuels in the US, we've had change in the chemical composition of our precipitation, and that in turn has led to increases in pH and changes in organics and metals and the biology within our lakes. And so again, through that research partnership with Dalhousie and engagement in Water Research Foundation projects, we've developed an algal monitoring program, and this is an evolving program since 2016 that's based on best practices in the industry. And so we use a multi-pronged approach to be able to identify and assess changes in general water chemistry and algal populations, mainly cyanobacteria, and the potential impacts on water quality and treatment. So cyanobacteria are capable of producing algal toxins, which if are above regulatory limits in treated water would lead to a do not consume advisory. So that's why we've taken a very proactive approach to developing this program to ensure we can be ahead of any potential situation. If I could move on to the next slide, please. So this slide shows aspects of that algal monitoring program. And so at the top, we have regulatory requirements in terms of algal monitoring, and mainly we do visual inspection of all of our intakes to look for algal activity, and we also have to conduct annual algal toxin analysis. However, you'll also see here that we go well above and beyond our regulatory requirements so that we can continue to be proactive in our response. So we have routine monitoring that we conduct bi-weekly at our raw water intakes and monthly on our lakes. And this routine monitoring program uses both in-house imaging and genetic testing tools, and also analytical toxin analysis in order to assess the situation on a routine basis. We also have a pre-screening program where we have continuous monitoring of algal pigments in our intake and in the lake. And we conduct raw water analysis for key parameters and observe that treatment process for any changes that may indicate any algal activity. And so if we see any changes in any one of these in monitoring programs, regulatory, routine, or pre-screening, that puts us in a response monitoring program where we do some investigation, we figure out what's going on, do some additional testing to be able to assess risk ahead of any potential problems. And what you see here on the right-hand side, it looks like a little UFO. This is one of our continuous monitoring units that's out in one of our lakes looking at algal pigments. If we move on to the next slide. So now we'll talk about this year in particular. And this year has been a year of extreme weather events. So from the deep freeze we had back in January to an extremely dry and hot spring, followed by forest fires, and then followed by torrential rains. We have seen a lot of things that are outside of our norm. And shown on this plot in particular are some of the impacts that we saw due to the rainfall events this summer on July 21st in particular. So here we have plots of color in UV 254 for our three larger water supplies. So we have Benary Lake, Lake Major, and Pockwalk. And this data is from 2015 to 2023. And color in UV 254 are parameters that look at natural organic matter concentrations. So they're indicators of organics in our water supplies. And each color represents a different year. They're overlaid on top of each other with the darker years representing earlier times, and 2023 is represented in yellow. So I think you can all agree when you look at this plot that 2023 is a definite outlier, and we've seen a significant increase in our organic parameters and away from sort of historical norms due to the impact of these storms. We've also seen changes in pH and metal concentrations in our source waters as a result of this particular event in July. So we saw this immediate and sustained increase in organic matter in the supplies. In Lake Major and Pockwalk, this has been coming down over time. But it's unclear whether this water quality will go back to sort of historical norms or whether there will be a new baseline established. And just to pull your attention to Benary, it looks a little bit different because the intake here at Benary is at the bottom of the lake. And during the lake, during the summer, the lake stratifies, and there's little mixing between the upper and the lower layers in the lake. And so we didn't see the impact of that rain event until the lake mixed in the fall. And now you can see an increase in organic matter after that lake has mixed. And so these lakes have historically not been impacted by precipitation events, and you can see that through the historical data. And the water quality is generally quite stable, other than the longer term trends that we've seen due to lake recovery. And so what we're now seeing is that the change in intensity and patterns in precipitation events are having direct and sustained impact on our water quality. So now if we move to the next slide. So The changes that we've seen in our source water have, of course, led to impacts in our treatment plants. And our operations team has been working tirelessly during this time to adapt and make changes to the treatment process to ensure that the safety of our drinking water remains high. And so while these changes have affected our source water, I want to assure you that our drinking water has remained safe during this period, and we've continued to meet all drinking water quality guidelines. And some of the impacts that these changes have had on the treatment process include increased chemical use. So where we have more organic matter in the source water, we have to add more chemicals in order to remove them from the treatment process. This results in increased operating costs. Likewise, if there's more material that we need to remove through treatment, it affects how our filters operate, and we need to backwash them more frequently, which results in increased energy use. And because of this increased backwashing, it also leads to a decreased production efficiency within our treatment plants. So we need more water for the process itself. And then lastly, another important issue in terms of the treatment plants is an increased requirement for operator resources to manage the process. So where we have more chemical deliveries, we have more backwashing, there's more time that's needed to be spent on operations and monitoring as well by the operators within the plants. And so with both the long-term trends and now these most recent impacts due to the storm, the water quality has changed substantially since our treatment plants were built. And that now means, particularly for JD Klein, that we're operating outside the design criteria for a direct filtration plant. And while this has caused operational challenges, it has not affected the safety of the drinking water. But we've recognized this, and as of several years ago, we established the Water Supply Enhancement Program, and that program is underway and will be providing the needed upgrades that are available in order to ensure that we can continue to meet safe water delivery for the next 50 years in light of all of the changes that we're seeing, both long-term and short-term changes due to climate change. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Colin Waddell to talk about stormwater and wastewater impacts.
Thanks, Wendy. So as you've heard some previous presentations from myself around the impacts to our stormwater system, I don't think we have to go over the impacts that we've seen in the Hammons Plains area. And this is a more general overview of some of the damage we have sort of sustained to our infrastructure on a more consistent basis over the summer from July all the way through August, September. And I'd like to point particularly to the photograph in the middle there where the blue line says the approximate flood level. That was the Farmers Dairy pump station. So that's where the flood level actually got to around that pumping station, which took the pumping station completely offline. We were able to restore it in short order with some workarounds. However, we've still got to permanently repair that station specifically. So we have ongoing impacts from the July 21st event. And then if we go to the next slide, Jake. So, we have a Herculean effort, massive effort in operations to get culverts restored, to get roads opened, to restore customer access to properties. It takes us a week. Barely a week after we've finished that work, we have a massive rain event in Dartmouth. And the picture you see there on the left, just to give you some context, that water is approximately 20 to 25 feet in the air, and that's coming out of one of our stormwater discharges. So, we don't get a chance to get, ourselves back on our feet, and we're knocked back again by another significant storm event. And that storm event, in Dartmouth wasn't quite as intense as the July event in the Halifax side, but it did result in rainfall amounts of 133 millimeters in Dartmouth. So, you are, over probably a 1 in 20 year event there. To contextualize that, the average precipitation between June and August is from 1981 to 2010 is between 250 and 300 millimeters. In 2023, for the same time period, we saw between 600 and 800 millimeters fall. So that has a massive impact on all of our infrastructure. Like most utilities in North America, we do have an aging infrastructure issue. So obviously this puts undue stress on already aging infrastructure that we're trying to stay ahead of a failure rate so we don't incur critical asset failures. And so this, if these assets don't fail during these events, they are certainly weakened, and we are not actually having the time or resources to recover enough to go and assess these properly. So we are still, behind the curve in terms of getting back to normal. The thing that's missing from these slides also is the people behind the camera. We looked at that. Our frontline crews lost 6 weekends out of this summer due to storm and emergency responses. So, on top of that, our crews are spent. We have been working fairly, pretty much round the clock for 3 months. So that helps with it doesn't help with morale. So and the one thing that you do after emergency work is obviously you do the mitigation repair. Often you defer standard operation and maintenance. However, if you have aging infrastructure, this is exactly the time that you want to focus on that O&M activity. So we have a number of challenges on a number of fronts that we're slowly getting working through. And if nature would be kind enough to give us a little break, we would be eternally grateful. Next slide, please, Jake. So just to summarise, climate change is a risk to everything we do, from a water supply plants to the collection systems, our wastewater pump systems and our wastewater treatment systems. The wastewater treatment systems are impacted disproportionately because of the time frame of a rain event, where rain will impact a wastewater treatment plant within minutes, as opposed to a water supply plant, which could be hours and days. So our operations teams are constantly having to pivot around. The team is focused in meeting these challenges and adapting. So we're trying to learn from a debrief from every emergency event. We go through debriefs to do the lessons learned. And we continue to operate and respond to the impacted infrastructure during emergency events, which is a testament to our operations team and the rest of the staff that provide the support. And with that, I will hand it on to Mr. Jeff Myrick.
Jeff, you're muted.
One of the key things that we've learned through these significant weather events is that there's always lessons to be learned, and that we're constantly committed to ensuring that our stakeholders have the most and best information possible. The one caveat that I will say is that when we are in these extreme situations, and once we enter into the emergency response structure, there is a significant amount of coordination that needs to occur with HRM and with the province as well, and so that can impact what and when we communicate. Next slide. As I said, we're always looking to enhance our communications and trying to work with our partners, specifically HRM, to just qualify what the responsibilities are and how they're divided. One of the key things that we're always working on is how to be more efficient and effective in the triaging of calls and emails that go to customer care, and who's responsible, whether it's an issue for Halifax Water or if it's an issue for the municipality. And so with that, we're constantly revisiting the processes for the intake and the escalation of issues, and ensuring that things are not duplicated, but we're also looking at the resources that are needed to ensure the volume and the level of services maintained. One of the things that I'd like to point out here is the image on the screen. You'll see that one of the things that our staff came up with during the last significant event was a stormwater infrastructure tracking software app that could then identify with stars, as you see on the screen there, where an issue was, and appropriate images and everything else to give the detail for crews that are out in the field. Next slide. So from a communications point of view, just go through the process. We've instituted a new protocol, and this will be activated as soon as significant weather watch has been announced from the provincial AMO. And I'm proud to say that we actually initiated this last week, late last week, when we started to get the weather watch warnings. So you may have, some of you may have seen emails in your box on Friday, just giving you updates. But as part of that, based on what kind of weather it is, we will have emergency preparedness tip sheets available, and we'll share them with the appropriate folks so that they feel they have what's needed to arm them to respond. And if and when the Halifax Water incident command structure needs to be activated, we are committed to identifying that with commissioners and councillors about 30 minutes before we send out any PSA, just so you know where we are with the storm response team and what we're dealing with. Next slide. During the storm response, if we get into an ICS or incident command structure, the incident commander must approve all communications related to Halifax Water response. So from that point of view, we'll be working closely with within the structure to ensure that folks have the information they need. And as much as reasonably possible, all communications will be sent early to commissioners and councillors, but there may be times where this might be just a very tight window and we have to respond. And so please bear with us as we work to make this process more seamless. And then when the storm response notifications are required, specific to certain areas, like in stormwater management areas, for example, if we know there are certain problem areas that are just going to be an issue, we will flag that with the specific councillor so that they are better armed with what we're doing, but also what can be done to preempt from a communications point of view. Next slide. In terms of the extreme response moving forward, we are going to be proactively and preemptively disseminating information to ratepayers, including newsletters and public outreach. That's going to be moving forward. We're going to do a lot more of that. We're also going to be hosting online information sessions to update our customers. We're in the process of scheduling a couple of these now over the next several weeks. One of the key things that we're going to be focused on is for these ones is just why stormwater management matters, how we got into the situation we were in July and August, how we responded, what it means for the future, and then how customers are impacted by that. And so they'll be focused on specific areas, and we're going to try to do the areas that were most damaged first. And these will be recorded and be online, and we know there will be plenty of questions, of course, and it's just good to get the information out there and be transparent. And as always, information will also be shared with councillors for their social media and newsletters. As part of the package last week, we started to create new banners and new images to support some of the focus topics, so like heavy rain events and stuff like that. So we'll be doing more of that. Next slide, please. We have updated our web pages with some of the new fact sheets. We'll be doing more. And the handouts, we have stormwater management handouts, but one of the things we need to do is remove the right-of-way charge. HRM's right-of-way charge is unreferenced there. And you'll see in our video that we've developed for stormwater management, it's in there as well. So we've got to edit that out now. And so we're also taking that as an opportunity to look at what other supplemental educational videos we can do for stormwater management, but also other services that we provide. And of course, there's much more of a reliance and a need for social media. And so we're going to continue to leverage that, especially when we get into situations where our call center needs the additional support. We'll be much more heavier in social media. Next. I think that's it, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, everyone. That was a fantastic update. The board really appreciates that. As you know, it's been a focus for all of us. I do think we have one more item in this. It's the outreach to ratepayers, but based on us running out of time, can I request that information report on the outreach and communication plan to ratepayers be put into the board package in January as well? Yeah, and we'll just defer that one, but it did look excellent, Jeff, and I want to make sure that all the commissioners have time to consider it in the January package. So number one, thank you to Wendy and your team. I think the implementation of the water supply enhancement program in many years ago was very had lots of foresight to it, and we are reaping the benefits now. So thank you for that update and all of the hard work. And thank you to Colin as well. And please pass on the board's appreciation to the entire operations team. It has been a tremendous effort for many months now. Hopefully frozen water maybe helps the situation. I have no comment on that. Is there any questions? We're almost out of time, but if there's any questions for Colin or Wendy or Tarek or Jeff, I don't want to miss anything from the board members. No? Okay, Heidi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I simply wanted to clarify, when this is brought forward in January, did you want it brought forward as a discussion item or an information item?
I think information report is fine, and if a board member wants a discussion, they'll bring it forward. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, seeing no questions, but thank you for that update. That was fantastic. I need a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Zaharov.
I was first. Sorry, Mimi.
Thank you, everyone. Another great meeting, and welcome aboard, Councillor Russell. And we'll see everyone at the board workshop tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.